Hi, and welcome to the 5th class of TSD Mindfulness. This class is the temperamental body is a mirror of how we interface with the world around us. It's actually more than just a mirror. It is how we, excuse me one second here. It is how we interface with the world around us. Interface is defined as a point where two systems meet and interact. So the temperamental body is one of these systems, and then we have the whole world around us, which is another set of systems, and so it's where they meet, and that's a lot of what we'll talk about today. But first we'll do some review. In the last class we talked about the second teaching on trust, which is divine flow can be wholeheartedly trusted. An example of this is a force swooping in and guiding you to take a particular action. Maybe this is something that you've experienced in your own life, just felt like this force just coming in and just felt really moved to do something. So that's an example of divine. The purpose of connecting with divine flow is to feel supported, to feel renewed, and with direction. Last class we also talked about logic, and that logic is sometimes correct and sometimes not. And so just to go back on that a little bit, so this logic is a personal logic that we have within our mental field that we've created throughout our lives. And this logic is sometimes correct and sometimes it's not, as far as what is best for our highest interest. Instinct is the same. Instinct is sometimes valuable and sometimes not. We get that instinctual urge. Sometimes it really is something that's good for us and sometimes it's not. But divine flow is different. Divine flow is always correct and always valuable. We also talked about how our will can aid in waiting and trusting, and the reason waiting and trusting is important is because that's how we can move into this divine flow, is by waiting and trusting, and we need to use our will to do this. And it's really important to talk about will and what we can apply, we should, which is good to apply our will to. It's really good to have a spiritual teaching, spiritual practice that addresses what to do with your will, because we all have it. So we all need to know what to do with it. So as far as waiting and trusting, when we wait, we use our will to stop us from jumping ahead of ourselves and instead simply be in the moment. So that's one way that we can use our will for trusting, and when for waiting. And when we trust, we can use our will to disengage from our logic and steady our gut and to be in our heart. So that's mindfulness, right? That is taming our mental field, soothing our gut field, and dwelling in our heart field. So we can use our will to bring us along on that process. That's a little general, and then we get into more specifics of how to use your will in those stages. I also defined the temperamental body and explained that our mental, gut, and heart fields work together to drive our inclinations and emotions. So let's go over that for a second. So the temperamental body, right, made up of the mental field, the gut field, and the heart field. And they work together to drive our inclinations and our emotional responses. So that's why we call it the temperamental body, because the temperament are our inclinations and our emotional responses. Since these fields work together, the temperamental body is a system. And we talked about that last time. These are different three parts of a working system. And that's important to know and to see it that way. And it's important because systems are everywhere. So we need to know that this part of this like energetic thing that's going on in our being is a system in itself. I explained that the mental field is made up of beliefs, mental emotions, creative ideas, desires, and even more. And these aspects work together to create another system. So then we've got like this subsystem. The mental field's its own system, the gut field's its own system, the heart field's its own system. So then we've got these systems within a system. I mentioned the relationship between the mental field and the brain. The mental field relies on the brain's circuitry to process information. So you can think of the mental field as the software, the brain as the hardware. So they're not the same, but they work together. And we discussed the difference between the mental field and the mind. The mind is more similar to consciousness, and it can move. The mental field is fixed. The mental field is there. The gut field is there. The heart field is there. They don't move around. The mind is what moves. Our consciousness moves between these fields. So it's important to know this distinction between the mind and the mental field. However, in our culture, the mental field and the mind field are often one and the same because our consciousness is usually in our mental field because of the way our culture has developed. We're really super focused around the mental field, and we really identify with that part of ourselves. And so our consciousness is often there primarily, not totally, but a lot. But but we can move our mind. So now we're going to go ahead and start talking about new information. Okay, so that's the end of the review. And we were talking about the first list on the third tier of the teachings, of TSD mindfulness teachings. And that first list is the fields of the temperamental body, the 3 fields of the temperamental body. Last week we started with the mental field and went into detail about that. Today we're going to talk about the gut field and the heart field in more depth. The gut field is located at the solar plexus, which is a complex set of nerves found in the pit of the stomach and is part of the sympathetic nervous system. The gut field is in relationship to the solar plexus just in the same way the mental field is in relationship to the brain. The gut field relies on the physical structure of the solar plexus to create responses. So thoughts, specifically decisions and beliefs, are the responses in the mental field. I think we talked about that last time. But impulses are the response of the gut field. The gut field responds in a binary way. These impulses are binary. Binary meaning on-off, just 2 options. And these 2 options for the gut field are contentment, because all is preserved, because the gut wants everything to be preserved, or discomfort, because certain aspects of life are at risk for changing. So the responses are either comfort or discomfort, on, off, this binary response. The clearest and most pronounced feeling of discomfort that the gut expresses is the fear of you or someone you are close to. The most intense response that you will get from the gut field because it's about preservation, and that's like the biggest thing to preserve is life. Preserve your life. Preserve the life of those around you. Death is one of the most monumental changes you will experience, and the gut field responds very strongly. The gut field can be associated with instinct, but what separates instinct from thought is that instinct is something that we are born with as opposed to something we learn during our life. However, I don't want there to be a confusion. The gut field isn't primarily or totally based in instinct as far as the type of instinct that is that you're born with, the innate instinct. The gut also responds to as a result of your life experience. So therefore the gut field is not combined. When practicing TSD mindfulness, we use reassurance to soothe the gut. This is in contrast to the mental field. So that's something that's really important, a real big distinction between TSD mindfulness and traditional mindfulness practice, is that there's these different approaches for the different fields. We will approach the mental field, work with the mental field in a different way than we would work with the gut field. The mental field, we want to disengage. We want to focus on something like a sound or a physical sensation to disengage from the mental field. We want to kind of step back. The gut field, it doesn't work that way. The gut field, you can't really just step away from it. That's actually going to maybe make it worse for the gut field. Instead, you kind of need to lean into the gut field and bring into consciousness, your consciousness, some concepts that are going to help relieve, bring some relief to your gut field. So again, with the mental field, we use concentration, but the gut field, we wouldn't do that. We use reassurance. So in a sense, we speak to the gut and remind the gut of all that will remain intact and be preserved. Remember, the gut field is all about preservation and very worried about what's going to be preserved and what's not going to be preserved. And it's not just a physical life. We're also preserving our emotional self, our emotions, preserving our emotions. We want to preserve our ego. So these are some things that the gut field is going to be concerned about. And if a change is on the horizon, okay, so the way we soothe our gut is we want to remind the gut all that is going to remain intact. So the gut's triggered, it feels something in your life is going to change. And one way that we can soothe the gut is to bring into our consciousness a list of all of the things in our life that are actually not going to change. Because even though this one thing might change, there's definitely all these other things in your life, and you can bring this into your consciousness, that are going to stay the same. And so just running that list through your consciousness can help calm your gut a little bit. Another thing that you can do to help soothe your gut is to say something like, and bring this idea into your consciousness, that if this change does happen, it's for your highest interest, and so it's a good thing. Okay, and this part of the practice is, about tuning into yourself and trusting what comes through. There might be something completely different than I have mentioned that you feel, and it's going to help soothe your gut. It's really what your gut needs to hear in that moment. The most important point to know about the gut field in regards to TSD mindfulness is that we need to soothe our gut field as well as our mental field to move our consciousness into the heart field. All right, so that's the practice. Taming the mind, soothing the gut, and moving and dwelling into the heart field. It's also important to note that the gut field drives your behavior and your relationships with the people and the things in your life, just like the mental field. We talked about that last time, that the role that these fields play in your relationships. The gut field, it plays a role. It affects your relationships with everything. We have everything that's in your world, you have a relationship with. And so the way the gut field responds is going to affect that. The actions you take to save your life, to save your own life, that's going to affect your relationships. That's a big one, right? How do you, if your life is in danger, how do you respond? How do you express yourself? So that's going to affect your relationships. That's kind of like a big one. But something that's more like normal day to day is the way you express yourself to keep your emotions preserved, for example. Or how do you express yourself to preserve your ego? These expressions, which are driven by your gut field, affect your relationships. So what might be an example? If you are in an office, you share an office with someone, and something's come up that's feels like your emotions aren't going to be preserved, like you feel like you might break down a little bit, or maybe lose your temper a little bit. The way you express yourself, or what follows after that, is really going to affect that relationship, right? So that's just one of many, many, many examples of how your gut field can affect these relationships. Despite popular belief, our mind or our mental field, really more correctly, our mental field, is not solely responsible for our peaceful state or lack thereof. Instead, all three fields of the temperamental body affect our state. So that's another important distinction between the traditional mindfulness practice and TSD mindfulness practice, is that in traditional practice, we're really focused on taming the mind and how that affects your experience. But this, we're not just paying attention to the gut and the heart, because those are also affect your state for sure. I'm just going to take this website off here. There we go. All right. And so we talked a little bit about the gut field, and now we're going to move on and talk about the heart field. It's the third item on the list of the fields of the temperamental body. The final field, the heart field, is located in the heart area. The heart field is the most ambiguous of the three fields, yet it's the most powerful in our lives. Ambiguous, meaning hard to interpret. The heart field is the one that's the hardest to interpret. The mental field is pretty easy to interpret. It's very verbal. Lots of words. We can pretty much, if we have a decent mindfulness practice, we can pretty much get a sense of what's going on in that mental field. And the gut field is also pretty easy to notice. It's very physical. It's very fear, no fear based. It's pretty. It's not too difficult to figure out what's going on in the gut. The heart, on the other hand, is more ambiguous and but harder to interpret, and that's where that also the waiting and the trusting plays an important role in that. All right, so let's consider a seesaw. A seesaw as a metaphor for the temperamental body to better understand the heart field. The mental field and the gut field are on either end of the seesaw. They work in tandem, pulling us between simulate change, analyze outcomes, and put plans into action to make change. That's a mental field, right? The mental field's all about simulate change, analyze, make plans, make action plans. That's going on in the mental field. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have the gut field, which is keep everything in our life exactly the way it is, right? So they're kind of like these opposites, and they can balance each out a little bit. The middle of the seesaw is the pivot point, representing the heart. And so the heart is the crux of our experience. It's where that crux sits, right there where the heart is. And so it's pivotal. The heart is pivotal. It's an important concept. Pivotal. So when we tame our mental field and soothe our gut field, we balance the seesaw. And the seesaw isn't like a perfect metaphor, because you can have your mental field and your gut field like both up, right? They could be both up, not necessarily like going like this all the time. It could both be very stimulated. But see that pivot point. So when we balance the seesaw, we tame the mental field and we soothe the gut field, then we make it possible to move into our heart field, because we're balanced. It's just easier. It's just seeing that image of a seesaw going up and down. It's hard to really be in that center, that pivotal point. But when the seesaw is balanced and still, it's easier to be in that center part, which is the heart. In the heart exists the reality of our experience. It is where old pain resides, as well as true joy. So it's real. What's there is real. What's up here and in our gut, not necessarily totally real. When practicing TSD mindfulness, focus on moving your consciousness into your heart field and acknowledge what is there. What is there? What is in our heart? Once we've tamed the mind, we've disengaged, calmed, soothed the gut, then what is there in the heart? What is there expresses itself in different ways for different people. You might notice a physical sensation. You might notice rhythmic energy, or you might notice a heart emotion you're experiencing in the present moment. The rhythmic energy is probably the most abstract of the three expressions that I listed. The rhythmic energy often expresses itself as a symbol. So let's see a way that I could explain this. If you've done hypnotherapy, you've seen symbols probably in your mind, in your mental field, right? They've come up and they've been symbolic and they've made meaning for you with your hypnosis or hypnotherapy experience. So imagine that that symbolic experience actually comes from the heart. Those symbols are actually coming from the heart instead of the mental field. And so that's a good way to think about these symbols in the heart field. The symbol might be visual in your mind's eye, or it might be just something that you sense. It's just, you might not actually see what that symbol is, but you just have a knowing, you just know that that's the symbol. So it depends how visual you process. Emotions may surface during any point of your practice. Perhaps while taming your mental field, or soothing your gut field, or dwelling in your heart. So I want to talk about that a little bit. What happens if a really intense emotion surfaces, especially in the heart field? There can be some pretty intense emotions that can come up. So if they do, rely on mindfulness. So meaning that you just sit with the emotion. Notice how the emotion manifests in your physical body. Okay, what do you feel? What physical feelings do you feel when this emotion is coming up? Are you getting really tight in your shoulders? Are you feeling something in your head? Notice what physical sensations are coming up. It's a really good way to be mindful when that emotion is up. And let the thoughts come and go in the emotion, because the emotion is probably going to create some thoughts, but the emotion also, let those thoughts and emotion come and go as they may without judgment. So that's a really traditional mindfulness practice, right? Just letting it come into your consciousness, letting it go out just as easily as it comes in, as easily as it goes out. But some of these intense emotions, especially from the heart, might not be so easy to just come in and out. It might be there for a little bit. So just notice. Last time we talked about this, we talked about just letting the emotion, whatever size and intensity it is, it naturally is. Don't make it bigger, don't make it smaller. Our mind is really good at amplifying. Our mental field is really good at amplifying. It's really good amplifier. But at the same time, sometimes our mental field can actually shrink things down too. So what we want to do is just let that emotion just be whatever size that it is naturally. The most important thing to know about the heart field is it is the keystone of the temperamental body. And what you become mindful of in the heart is real, right? What's in there is real. That joy is real, that there's pain, that pain is real. These are really real things, and so this is what we want to be with and sit with and be more mindful of. So this is this really, I like the term ultra mindfulness. The TSD mindfulness is a mindfulness practice. We are being ultra mindful, so much so that we are in our heart and we're really mindful of what's going on in there, what's really real. And during TSD mindfulness practice, we practice moving our consciousness into our heart field by taming our mental field and soothing our gut field. All right. Okay, I think we're ready to start the meditation. And, well, not actually begin the meditation, but begin talking about the meditation. So let's talk about that. As a review from last class, I explained how to verify whether we really are taming our mental field, whether we really are soothing our gut field, whether we really are dwelling in our heart field, because that's the practice, right? Taming the mental field, soothing the gut field, and dwelling in the heart field. But how do we really know that we are doing that? And I call this process a 3-point check. Okay, we're doing a 3-point check, see what's going on in our mental field, our gut field, and our heart field. And so what we talked about last time was that we know that we are taming our mental field if we observe and experience quiet. And it can be a relative quiet. It might just be quieter than before. All right, there's less processing of ideas. There's less simulating future outcomes. There's less analyzing of past experiences. So we notice there's less of that, and we know that we are taming our mental field. We know we are soothing our gut field if we observe or experience a calmness at our core. So this calmness of our mental field is a little bit different than the calmness of our gut field. The feeling is a little bit different. The feeling of the calmness of our mental field is it's quiet. It's quiet. Break. The calmness of our gut field is it's a calmness to our core. Our whole entire being feels calm. It's like every cell in our body just feels calm. It's a little bit different. So it's not just a tranquility in our mind, but it's our overall being feels calm. So if this is what you're experiencing, then you know that you have successfully soothed your gut. And that can be relative also. It's calmer. Your overall core calmness is calmer. All right. Also noticing if you're soothing your gut field, there's an absence of worry about possible disruptions in your life or changes on the horizon. So less concern, less worry. We might know that we are in our heart field if we are uncertain about everything. If you know something or have certainty about how something's going to turn out, you're likely not fully in your heart field. Because when you're fully in your heart field, there's no knowing. There's no knowing how this is going to pan out, how this is going to unfold. There's no knowing. So that's the go-to that I use the most. If I'm in the middle of my meditation and I just want to do a check and say, am I really in my heart field? Have I tamed my mind enough, and have I soothed my gut to really get into my heart? Then I kind of go through some things that are going on in my life and notice if I have an idea of what's going to happen. If I think I know what's going to happen, I'm not completely there. So I have to move my consciousness into a place where I really don't know the outcome. And it's a real surrender. It's really a powerful practice in itself to just be in that energy of not knowing. It's very, it's a little bit frightful, part of it for like a minute, like a second, but then it gets to this complete piece of just like, imagine like all these layers just shedding when you get to that place of just not knowing the outcome. Actually ends up being a really nice feeling. So that's a way to know if you are in your heart field. We also might notice a rhythmic energy in the heart area. This rhythm might be a physical sensation that we kind of feel like just like a perpetual tightness in a certain area in the heart field. That would be an example of a rhythmic sensation because it's perpetual. It's there. It's there. It might impress a symbolic image, like I talked about before. So that's just really being mindful of a symbol that's actually right there in your heart field. And you might, such as joy, gratitude, or sadness. These are heart emotions. Mental emotions are different. A mental emotion might be resentment. It's based in logic. It's logical. A mental emotion might be happiness because we need A, B, and C to happen to create that happiness. Joy is not contingent on anything. It just happens. It's very spontaneous. All right. So that's another way to know that you're in the heart field, is if you're noticing those heart emotions. In tonight's meditation, we will continue to notice this rhythmic energy. It's not your heartbeat, but it's a repetitive occurrence that represents something that drives you for better or for worse. So again, it's a repetitive occurrence that represents something that drives you, right? And it's energetic, it's symbolic, that nature. I'm going to lead you to notice physical sensations tonight in the meditation to help you tame your mental field. In previous classes, I've led you to listen to sound to help tame your mental field. In another class, I led you to focus on your breath to help tame your mental field, and I have led you to notice physical sensations in a previous class, and we're going to do that again today. So remember, it's not so much what you are focusing on while taming your mental field, but how you are concentrating. So you can focus on what you want. Even though I'm leading you to focus on physical sensations tonight, you might instead like to listen to a sound, a fan blowing in your room, for example, something like that. And just as we did a couple classes ago, I want you to think of 3 situations going on in your life. It can be important, it can be less significant. For example, your job, just simply your job. It's a situation. A relationship with a certain person is a situation, and they don't have to be like crazy situations that you are battling with or anything like that. Just a situation. And it'll make sense once we do the meditation, but I will be asking you to bring those into your consciousness. All right, I think we're ready to do the actual meditation. So find a comfortable seated position. If you prefer to lie down, you can do that, but if you find that you focus better sitting up, then do that. All right, so go ahead and close your eyes. Take in a few relaxing breaths. Inhale. And as you breathe out, feel yourself settle physically. Inhale. And as you exhale, feel yourself settle mentally. One more focused inhale. And as you exhale, feel your emotions settle. Notice any physical sensations in your body. What do you feel? Perhaps pressure from the furniture or floor where you rest, or an ache, or the air touching your skin. If there are multiple sensations, choose one to focus your attention on. If you notice your attention drift in another direction, exercise your will and choose to focus on the physical sensation. Take a step back and notice the part of your mind that focuses your attention. Notice how this part of your consciousness expresses itself to you. Continue to notice the physical sensations in your body. Notice the subtleties of the sensation. Do you notice temperature? Do you feel the texture of your clothing? If you are noticing a pain, is it sharp or dull? If directing your attention toward a sensation is challenging, consider directing your attention on the part of your consciousness that chooses the direction of your attention. What energy do you notice? Is it clear and focused? Or is it distracted? Is it spinning or jagged? Or perhaps it is clear and focused. Apply your will to this part of your consciousness. Use your will to steer your attention towards a physical sensation. And let go of using your will to direct anything else in your experience. On your own, notice physical sensations and notice the behavior of your attention. Remember, the only control we are attempting to exercise is the control of our attention's direction. Notice what happens when you purposefully apply will to your concentration. Notice if your mental field feels more settled. Now move your attention to your gut area at the belly. What physical sensations do you notice there? Perhaps you notice something less physical, more energetic, a fluttering or a vibration. If you notice your attention drift in another direction, exercise your will and choose to focus on your gut field. Take a step back and notice the part of your mind that focuses your attention. Apply your will to this part of your consciousness. Use your will to steer your attention towards your gut. And let go of using your will to direct anything else in your experience. Can you detect any concerns for change? Can you detect a fear of something in your future changing? How is this fear expressing itself in your gut field? If not, your gut may not be triggered and at peace. If this is so, simply stay focused on your gut. If there is a fear, acknowledge this fear. Notice how this concern expresses itself in your gut. It is natural and instinctual to be concerned about change. Consider this possible change in your future, yet also list all that will remain unchanged. Notice if this list soothes your gut. If your gut's still affected, consider that if anything will change in the future, it will be in your best interest. Be open to whatever is the best way to soothe your gut's fear of change expressed in your gut field. Now move your attention to your heart area. Move your attention there by repeating, I do not know what will happen with this certain situation in my life. I do not know what will happen with this either. Nor do I know the outcome of this other situation. Allow yourself to simply not know the answers or the outcomes. Feel this uncertainty. Now that you are settling your consciousness into your heart field, be still and wait and trust. Wait to observe a subtle physical sensation. Be still. Be open to emotions of the heart. Allow these emotions to surface. Notice them. Dwell with them for however long they express themselves to you. Your seesaw between your mind and gut is completely still. Notice any rhythmic essences in your heart. On your own, continue to notice physical sensations in the heart area. Rhythmic essences and emotions that might surface. If you feel your attention drift away from your heart field, notice the part of your consciousness that steers your attention. Use your will to stay focused in your heart field. Conclude the meditation with the sound of the singing bowl. All right, welcome back. So let's see, a couple reminders. If you are doing the TSD challenge, which is practicing TSD mindfulness 5 days a week for 30 days in a row. Well, I guess you're not practicing every day in a row, but you get it. 5 days a week for 30 days for a month. And how long you practice is up to you. Obviously, the longer you practice per day, the more you're going to get out of it, but you commit to what works for you. And notice how your feeling of contentment change, how your feelings of irritability might change, how your feelings of your connection with others change. Notice these factors in your life and how they change over the course of those 30 days. All right, so and if you have any questions about the process, please email me at any time. Actually, let me get my email up here for you now. There we go. There we go. And the classes page on tsdmind.org, there are a lot of great resources on that page. All of the videos to all the classes are on that page, in addition to all the notes. If you're the kind of person that processes really well by reading notes, then you can download the notes from every single class, which is basically a transcript of every class. And what else is there? There's also the blog, not on that page, but on the blog page, which goes into some details as well. All right, if you have any questions,